All right. Good morning. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Um,
You're
I'm
good to go,
going,
Madhu.
yes, sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a presentation to take everyone through, but very open to questions, etc. Um, So I'll just get started. Today's session this morning is Customer Support 101. It is setting up the function. So I just wanted to go into a little bit about me before we jump into the content. My name is Madhu. I am currently the Director of Support at ConnectRN. We are building a community for nurses, really changing how they think about work and life and everything that goes into their day to day. My background is X product, X implementation, but I've actually come full circle back into support land. A few companies that I've been at, I just threw their logos on here in case anyone is familiar, but really my passion is building and scaling client facing teams and all of the processes that go into supporting them from tools, working cross functionally, and really thinking about how to set up everyone on the team for success. So before I really jump in, I wanted to see if this could work, if we could do a bit of like a who's in the room today, because I know that attendees of Startup Boston can be anywhere from really early stage companies all the way through kind of scaling. So I wanted to get a sense of what does customer support look like at your current company, and if it does exist, how many people are on the team, and then if there are any particular questions that you're trying to answer for your team today, go ahead, I think, and typing it in the chat is probably the easiest. And I'll run through some of my content and then definitely want to go back and see what questions there are from everyone. And hopefully I can answer some of those. And if not, I'm more than happy to connect after the session. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love geeking out about processes and startup processes. So just to level set a little bit, the definition of customer support, because there can be a little bit of confusion between customer support, customer service, and customer success. So I really want to make sure that we all today have a shared understanding of what support is when I'm going through the context of what it means in my experience. So support is really a reactive team. It is a constant kind of, you never know what you're going to get from customers, from anyone. And when I say customer, that could mean anyone that you're serving, right? So my current company is kind of a dual-sided marketplace. So our customers are only one side of the marketplace and our nurses are on the other side. So it could be, anyone customer facing or external facing is that customer for you. Most typically, support teams are handling inbound inquiries, and what that means is just anybody reaching out to your team, whether it's like the support at company.com email address or a social media channel or a phone line. All of those ways that they can reach out to you are channels, so phone, email, chat. You might have text messaging, you might have social media. Those are all channels that you'll get inbound requests from customers. And then you'll often hear support teams referred to as being on the front lines. That really just means that they are hearing firsthand what customers are going through. Sometimes they're called the voice of the customer. But really, that's kind of, that is who is going to have an ear to the ground, really understanding the trends, the patterns, and everything that your customers are experiencing day in and day out. And then lastly, typically, as support teams evolve, they will have an escalation path to customer success or account management, depending on the flavor of what that looks like at your company, or engineering if it is a technical support request or a bug that a customer is reporting. So hopefully that makes sense. This is a pretty high level definition, but I think that it captures kind of the essence of really being reactive, setting up those channels for customers to be able to reach out to you. And then they're on the front lines, right? So they're the hello, like 1-800 blah, blah, blah company. They're hearing everything firsthand and then hopefully escalating it if they aren't able to resolve the issue themselves. So why is support important? First off, you want happy customers. Anyone who has used a telecom company, you know what it's like to call Verizon or Comcast. But ultimately, like everyone answering the phone at the end of the day wants to leave you with a good experience, and hopefully at least make up for the no if you're getting a negative answer. But really, everybody on the frontline teams can kind of make or break what that customer experience is like for your company. So it is important to kind of think about, okay, what is that final taste that your customers are leaving with once they are not, once their issue is resolved. Support teams also tend to really be able to engage users. So whether that's training customers on how specifically to use their product, really kind of giving them resources and not just that answer that they're coming to right now, but what we kind of call in the support community as next issue resolution. It's really kind of anticipating what their need is going to be. And that can create a really engaging and kind of sticky experience, building on retention and making sure that customers are going to keep coming back because they're getting an excellent experience from your company. All of that builds up to brand loyalty, which we all know is kind of the bread and butter of how companies are marketing and really trying to create communities out of their customer base. And that may or may not be something that is interesting or important to your company, but it is something that I threw on here because, as a customer facing team, every interaction is building on your brand. So it's something to think about, something to consider as your teams are growing. Lastly, support is important because that's the number one way that your team is going to get feedback. And I'll go into this a little bit more when we talk about metrics, but feedback from your support teams is going to be super crucial, especially at the beginning, and especially once your team is able to get more and more data driven. The support team is really going to be the team that has the pulse on how your customers are feeling about your product. So I'm going to go into kind of 4 main sections today, and then really want to kind of fly through these and then open it up to see if these resonate with everyone and what other questions I can answer. I'm leaving these here as things to ponder because the one major takeaway I want to leave you all with is that there's no one size fits all for a support team. Support is really going to look different for every business, depending on who your customers are, what stage of growth you're in, how many people you have on the team. All of those factors are really going to make a difference with how you think about setting up your support team. So take these as, really things to ponder. These aren't action items. These aren't, must-haves or checkbox items, but they're really things to consider when you're thinking about how you're setting up your team. So let me jump in. The first one is timing. So how do you know it's the right time to build a support team? So things that I would consider here and ask you to think about is, where is support living in your organization today? Is there anyone who is swamped with customer emails? So this could be someone who is the founder, head of engineering, a senior engineer who is just like, all right, I guess I'll just answer customer emails because someone has to. Now, if that tipping point goes to where they are, really just maxed out and saying, oh my God, all I do every day is answer customer emails. Imagine that when your company is doubling its revenue or tripling its customer base, whatever it is, depending on your company's growth targets. you really want to think about when is that right time, because you want to make sure you have the right people in place to help customers in the best way possible, and then keep your founder, your engineers, any of your salespeople, anyone like that, to be doing what you hired them to do best. So actions to ponder is be proactive for hiring support, especially if your product or service is technical or complex. If you're finding that a lot of your explanations require essays or require people getting on the phone to help customers, you really want to think about being proactive so that the person who is doing that work today doesn't burn out, or feels like their actual work that they're doing is not able to be prioritized. So again, if someone answering customer inquiries today has a really short fuse and is irritated and is just like, oh, these customers, you want to really keep a pulse on that, because that can lead to burnout, and really most importantly, that's going to lead to a poor customer experience, right? We can all tell when someone who we're talking to isn't interested in the conversation, and that leaves an impression, and you want to be really mindful of who is interacting with your customer, because going back to kind of why is support important, brand loyalty, stickiness, all of these things, every interaction with your product or your company is going to make a difference. The last thing to consider is, do you have buy-in from leadership that responding to customer inquiries is important, right? Another way to think about this, you have budget for a team. You might be at a stage where you're just building, and maybe you're deprioritizing feedback or you're deprioritizing bug resolution, and that's okay, but it's just really important to be on the same page with your leadership team and then set the right expectation accordingly with your customers. So the next component is style. I've talked about this a little bit, but how do you want your customers to feel while they're getting support from your team? I won't read through all the bullet points, but I think you can get the idea that how customers feel when they're reaching out to you is super critical, because that could impact how they're going to interact with your company in the future. Are they going to refer customers to you? Are they going to renew their service? So all of those things are going to impact how customers feel and ultimately how you deliver service, right? So if you see patterns in what customers are asking, you might consider a knowledge base. You might consider resources that you can put in front of customers to be able to get them answers as quickly as possible. And then the last piece of style and tone is that every channel these days in 2022 is a support channel. So I think I can name off the top of my head probably 5 companies that I've reached out to on Instagram that I've said, hey, like I got something in the mail from you guys and the order was off, or hey, I ordered something and I haven't seen a shipping notification yet. So every channel is a support channel, and customers are going to find you on social media, whether you put your social media handle or profile in front of them or not. So it doesn't mean that you have to treat everything like a support channel, but you need to have a strategy. So if I say, hey, I've tried logging in, I'm not able to log in, Stephanie could say, okay, well, if you're not able to log in, can you email support@blah, blah, blah.com, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. So Stephanie in Instagram is not responding to my question, but she is redirecting me to where I can get the best help possible. So the third kind of theme that I'll touch on today is hiring. So who is going to deliver the customer support experience of your dreams? Things to think about there are, what are the hard and soft skills that are needed to support your product or service? How long is it going to train them? And also, do you have an onboarding plan for them? So that's super critical, because you don't want to just hire somebody and then say, okay, good luck. You do want to make sure, especially if it's a technical product, if there are some certain processes that they're going to need to follow, make sure that you have a hiring plan, make sure that you have a transition period for them. And then what would growth look like for anyone hired to your team? So again, hire proactively. I think I highlighted this a couple of times here because I think that people often underestimate how long it takes to train someone, especially when you expect them to be able to not necessarily answer everything, but at least be okay with reaching out to a resource for questions. They don't need to know exactly what the answer is to any question that your customers are going to ask, but they do need to be able to know where they can get their answers. So think about that in terms of how long it's going to take to hire someone, how long it's going to take to train them, and also consider whether location matters to you. I feel like this is a no-brainer in the post-Panny world, but are you thinking about hybrid or remote flexibility? Are you thinking about cost of living? And also, depending on the nature of your business, you may also consider having somebody be non-exempt versus exempt as a full-time employee. Again, just things to consider, along with kind of legal or compliance factors. So if you are in a really specialized field, are there certifications or qualifications for anyone on your team or anyone at your company even to have in order to really fully support your customers? And then the last thing is employee engagement. And this is really kind of, I think this is probably across the board for any team, but really thinking about how are you engaging them and making them a part of your company culture. It can be really challenging to be on the only team almost that is fully reactive, right? A lot of other teams can control what their day-to-day looks like. They know what's on their roadmap. They know what deals are in their pipeline. But support is truly reactive in that you never know. If you see a ticket, you never know what's going to be in it. And so that can be pretty draining over time. And so when you're hiring, you want to think about, can this person be resilient? Are they going to be able to do the same thing day in and day out? And then what are you doing above and beyond that to support and engage them in the company culture and really keep them connected? I'm really passionate about that, so I could probably do a whole hour session just on employee engagement for support teams, but I will leave it at that and then go on to the last point, which is metrics. So do you know how to measure what matters, right? What matters to your teams? So some of the most common measurements of support teams I've listed here. There are tons and tons others. So if you want to take a quick screenshot, I can also copy paste these into the chat. But these are some of the most common ones. I'm sure if you Google them, you'll find similar acronyms and abbreviations and explanations as well. I would say pick one. Don't try to measure everything because then you will get into kind of that analysis paralysis, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, where you've measured everything and then you're like, cool, I have all this data, I don't know what to do with it. So you want to make sure that you pick a couple metrics and stick with them, right? Pick the metrics that matter to your organization. And that might look really, really simplistic at the beginning. It just might be tickets resolved. And that's totally fine. As your team evolves and grows and you're like, oh, like, feels like there's something deeper that we need to know besides just the number of tickets that we're doing. Cool. Are you getting feedback that you're taking a long time to resolve them? Okay, then let's measure average handle time. Are people complaining that you aren't reaching back, getting back to them quickly? Okay, let's measure first response time. People's issues are getting resolved, but like they tend to keep reaching back out again and again and again. Okay, there you go. You have first pass resolution as a metric. So depending on, I'm so sorry. Depending on the kind of phase that you're at, check in with your team too. They're going to be able to give you the qualitative side of what's actually happening. What are those trends? What are the patterns that they're seeing? And then ask for their input on solutions. I think this one is super, super key. There was a session yesterday about kind of building strong relationships with product teams. I think support and product really go hand in hand. I wouldn't say this lightly, but I do believe that if the perfect product exists, support teams wouldn't exist, right? Support teams exist because there is a gap somewhere in product, in service, in something that customers are expecting that they are not able to do on their own or in the way that you are wanting them to do. So it is super key that you kind of understand what is your support team seeing, because you're going to be able to either validate some assumptions that you might have in your roadmap. You might be able to create a solution for kind of the top the top driver for your tickets. And so just think about that. And again, don't measure everything. Pick a couple of metrics and stick with them. And the key there is to just measure over time. So key points, just as a summary. So timing, we talked about when are you ready to hire? We talked about style and tone. So what is that experience that you want to deliver? Where are customers reaching out to you? Hiring the right people who are equipped and that you can support as a business. And then metrics, what are you measuring? I threw in some other considerations because those will impact kind of these top four, I would say, is like funding and budget. Again, do you have support? Do you have buy-in to build a support team? How many tickets and customers are you trying to support today versus 6 months from now versus a year from now? Where in the organization should support sit? And that kind of goes hand in hand with influencing change. So depending on where in the org chart support sits, I believe, and we can debate this, I believe that the customer experience changes. If support is sitting with engineering versus operations or versus an actual customer success organization, the nature of who you hire, how you train them, what things are going to be top of mind for the person interacting with your customer is probably going to be a little different. But I think there's a trade-off. The farther from product and engineering a support team is, does that make it harder for them to impact the roadmap, to impact how bugs are resolved? So this could look really different in your organization. And I don't think that there's an ideal state, but it is super important that support teams are set up to be able to influence and drive that change. Otherwise, all you have is a help desk. And I think that it can be really draining for the people on the team to just be in that help desk mode of like, here's your answer. And they're doing that. They're doing here's your answer again and again, day in and day out. When really you want all of that, those interactions to be able to feed into something larger. I am going to stop there. I've talked a lot, and this is supposed to be a workshop. So I'll throw out my contact info here. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, but I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go into the chat, and feel free to, if there's anyone in person, you can unmute, and we can go from there. Okay. So Dan has a question. So I mentioned support sitting within customer success. Could you discuss the expanded role of customer success? Absolutely. So customer success is a really broad function at companies in this day and age. And there is a podcast I can actually recommend called Gain, Grow, Retain. Really, really awesome, thoughtful discussion on this exact question of what is the role of customer success at organizations. Customer success overall tends to be thought of as anything related to retention and growth, right? So growing your existing customer base. And I think there's some truth to that. What I believe is that customer success, though, is kind of a part of everybody's role at your organization, right? So anyone at your company should be thinking about how is the work that I'm doing. I'll type it right here. So how is the work that I'm doing impacting the customer life cycle? Whether I'm working at top of the funnel, I'm working in the sales journey, there is customer success there, right? Even if a customer doesn't purchase your product today, you still want to give them information. You may want to give them a resource of a product that is a better fit for them. Hopefully, as they grow, maybe at a future point, there can be a relationship between the two of you at that point. Customer success as a team tends to be focused on those aspects of current customers that are working with your business. So anyone who is actively a customer, really thinking about, are they getting the most from your product and service, and are they a churn risk, right? Customer success teams are often really measured by churn, which is customers that are falling off of your either subscription model, not renewing, or they're ending their contract with you. So customer success is kind of that layer of your company that is thinking about the health of your customers. But I really think that kind of the expanded role, the expanded role of that is how is every team at your business thinking about customer success and what they do, because every team might not be directly customer facing, but they do have that impact. So I hope that answers your question, Dan, but definitely check out Gain, Grow, Retain, because that question is literally every episode that they talk about. So hopefully you get some good insights from there. So another question, how do you feed customer support data into revenue operations functions to tie your work to revenue numbers? Great question. So there is a ratio that a lot of teams will look at, which I've heard called a few different things. My favorite term is incident rate. Incident rate is the number of tickets or requests that you're getting from a customer compared to is it number of users, number of companies that are working with you, number of customers. What is that ratio? So the number of tickets compared to the number of, let's just say, customers for simplicity's sake. So that number is oftentimes what you can use to model your capacity. It can be used to model how productive your teams are. So that incident rate can be controlled in a few different ways. It can be controlled by the number of tickets that your team is seeing, right? And so that's a little bit out of your control, but it can be controlled. It can also be controlled by product. It can be controlled by creating self-service resources or anything that is deflecting tickets. So in my experience, finance teams that I've worked with often like to see, okay, how much work is our support teams doing and how is that impacting revenue? And that ratio can often be a really good starting point to understand that volume of work and how it ties into revenue, because support teams typically don't generate revenue, right? Customer support teams are cost centers. And so the goal is to really maximize how much work the support teams are doing and deflect work. And deflection, again, comes from product, it comes from operations. And so the revenue itself isn't something that support teams can control, but you can show how much work are we doing in relation to that top line revenue number. So hopefully that helps, at least kind of get you thinking about how you could measure that, but that would definitely be one ratio that I would think about creating for your team is incident rate. And you could probably take that in a few different directions when you're looking at product specific areas or product specific areas or maybe customer segments or location of your customer base. So you could start to slice and dice that in some pretty interesting ways that finance teams would probably really like.
That was super insightful, Madhu. We also have a question from one of our audience members here in person.
Perfect.
Hi, Madhu. Great information. I'm Puck Fernson. I'm the founder of Guru. I've got a question about how technology and AI has changed the whole field of customer service to improve it, to make it more efficient, to make it better for both the customer on the marketing side when acquiring customers, and then for treating and working with those customers through their whole lifetime process with the business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure thing. We use Guru, by the way. We love it. Our teams love it. So cool to be able to put a face to a name. So yeah, I think that when I think about AI, I think about that deflection piece, right? How can technology enable customers to be able to find their answers, and not even just their answers, but get value out of your product without needing to interact with a human? This goes back to what I said about kind of support teams trying to put ourselves out of a job. Like, if in the perfect world, we wouldn't exist, right? Because in the perfect world, customers are able to find that value without talking to a human being. And that could be in the form of an airtight product that has no bugs, that has all the bells and whistles and everything that a customer could ever want. Or it could come in the form of technology, AI, chatbots, anything that is going to preemptively, I don't want to say guess, but like give the customer what we think they're looking for right as they're looking for it. So leveraging tools like Intercom for a customer that's new, to be able to get a walkthrough of a product. And then as soon as they're done with the walkthrough, chat with someone of like, okay, I walked through this, but this one piece didn't make sense, right? Instead of somebody just like stumbling in and you've given them a blank slate and they're like, I don't know what to do, I'm just going to keep calling support. So thinking about different ways to leverage technology, I think is really key. I think that it's a good question, but I think it goes back to kind of how much funding does your team have? It might not be something that at a really early stage you're going to be able to leverage, because AI and chatbots often need a good amount of intelligence to be able to inform what you're even going to preemptively tell customers about. So in my experience, really early stage teams are just going to be like, cool, we're just going to like take in whatever we can. They're going to then, collate that data in some meaningful way. And then maybe stage 2 or 3 is, okay, we're going to create a knowledge base. We're going to create a chat bot because we know, right? We have some amount of data that tells us that customers are looking for X, Y, Z when they reach out to our teams. And so if you're not able to influence the ultimate like solution, then once you have enough data to be able to put that in front of customers and say, hey, like, this is what we know you're looking for, try this first.
Super answer. Thank you very much, and great perspective. Just as a follow-up, don't mean to steal, I know you get a lot of people with questions. In terms of white glove services for customers, do you have any data about how well there's an ROI for businesses that, for example, with Apple, or you could pick a number of businesses that no matter what happens with your product when they first launch, if anything happens, they're going to take care of it. Is there an ROI that has been seen within customer service cultures like that, that businesses, ours is a consumer product that's going out, a physical product, and we want everybody to know no matter what happens, you're going to be okay, and we're going to take care of you at the higher end of the market. Is there an ROI that is a data point that we can point to that would work on that piece?
I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest. If you were thinking about starting enterprise level support, I would think about trialing it, right? I would think about what is that good, better, best model of service and pricing and put that in front of customers and see how they react and kind of get some feedback from them that way on, is this too high? Is this too low? Also look at some competitors because a lot of things like are just on the internet. So I think like depending on what your competitors are doing too, that could give you a good understanding of where to price it. In terms of ROI and like specifically, is there kind of a study or a data point that I could point to? I don't know of one off the top of my head. Enterprise level support, I think, is super unique. It has its own set of challenges, and you kind of have to have that really tight knit relationship with the sales or account management side of the house. So I think that it's kind of a different, it's like the polar opposite of like evolution of support teams that I've personally been on and worked with. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are studies, but I'm not familiar with one off the top of my head. Sorry.
No, that was super perspective, just what you said. So thank you
Okay.
very much.
Cool.
Thank you, Puck. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to put in their final thoughts. And while we do that, Madhu, I just wanted to ask you, if folks wanted to connect with you, how would they do that?
Yeah. So I am always happy to geek out over anything customer facing, customer experience, employee experience. So I'll drop my LinkedIn and my email address in the chat. So feel free to reach out. I think the Goldcast thing also has like a messaging feature, so anyone's also welcome to reach out there. Yeah, that's kind of where you can find me.